Okay, 7 o'clock in Gardner, Kansas. Call the meeting to order. Please rise and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good evening, everyone. We've got a somewhat crowded room tonight. That's great to see. So we have some presentations this evening, and all to do with finance. Our excellent finance team. We'll start with Matt. Finance Director Matt Wolf.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. This is the 18th year that the city has prepared an annual comprehensive financial report. To date, all 17 previous annual financial reports were award winners. In our continued pursuit of excellence, the latest annual report will again be submitted for a Certificate of Achievement for Excellence in Financial Reporting with the Government Finance Officers Association. Mike Lowry, Senior Vice President, Assurance of Allen Gibson Hulick, is here tonight to present the completed fiscal year 2021 audit to the governing body. Mike?
Good evening, Mayor, City Council. Mike Lowry with Allen Gibson Hulick. We were engaged to audit the 2021 financial statements and the single audit in accordance with the uniform guidance. Before I get started, I'd just like to give a big thank you to the finance staff, Matt, Nancy, their team. The audit is a huge undertaking, and they prepare for that on top of or in addition to their normal daily duties, and so they were very well prepared for us, and we always appreciate that because it makes the audit go much smoother. I want to start by covering what we call our required communications. We do this in two forms to the governing body. One is a planning letter that you receive before we start the audit that alerts you to the planned timing, scope of the audit. And then the second letter that you receive is what we call our governance letter, which is the letter you have tonight, which discusses the results of the audit. And this is a reminder to the governing body that while we work with management to complete the audit, we work for the governing body. So that's an important distinguishment that we like to point out here. I'm not going to cover the letter in detail, but I am going to cover all the required highlights. One being, did the city adopt any new accounting standards in 2021? So Governmental Accounting Standards Board, or GASB for short, is what the city follows for their accounting guidance, and the city had no new accounting pronouncements that were adopted, so same as last year as far as that goes. Believe it or not all the numbers in the financial statements are hard and fast numbers. There are some what we call significant estimates in the financial statements. Those significant estimates relate to your OPEB or other post-employment benefits, the net pension liability, which is the CAPERS liability, and then as well as allowance for accounts receivable related to the electric utility. So the OPEB would be the estimate related to healthcare benefits that the city provides retirees, plus a small piece of OPEB that gets tacked on with the CAPERS liability. And then the net pension liability, which again is an estimate of the city's piece of the pie for the total liability of CAPERS. We did have what we call one uncorrected misstatement. That's kind of a bad term, but really what it boils down to is we found an error in the financial statements, but discussing it with management, and we concurred that that correction was not made. It was approximately $154,000, and really was just a timing difference between the booking of revenue and accounts payable. Now you might ask, well, why didn't we have them correct it? Well, in many instances, when you're done with the audit, you've got the financial statements done, a small error might pop up. And so we determined, is it material to the financial statements? Would it mislead the reader of the financial statements if that error was not corrected? And we go by certain materiality thresholds to determine what would mislead the reader, and we concurred with management that they did not have to correct it for the 2021 financial statements. The good news is that error has already been corrected, and that transaction is reflected correctly in the 2022 books and records. Okay. We also had one financial statement finding, which related to an audit adjustment that we did correct, approximately $1.6 million, which was related to the ARPA funding. And it was really just a technicality, at least in my opinion. So what the issue was is when you receive grant funding, technically you cannot record the revenue until you've identified eligibility expenditures. So when the expenditures are incurred, that's when the revenue is incurred. So the city had recorded the revenue and restricted that revenue in the net assets, but had not really spent the money or identified expenditures yet. So the proper treatment for that was to not recognize the revenue and defer the revenue or create a liability for that revenue until those expenditures were recorded. And just to put this into a little bit more perspective, as many of you know, all the funding, all the grant funding related to COVID, CARES, ARPA, all that was coming out fast and furious. So the money was coming out much quicker than the technical guidance, than the feds were providing the technical guidance. So we have seen this error quite a bit. And in many cases, we were impacted by that as well. So when we were doing an audit, we were checking the guidance 2 or 3 times just to make sure it hadn't changed or that it was available. So kind of an honest mistake, and in reality, how the city recorded it made logical sense. It just was a technicality that the guidance said, no, you have to do this. So it did result in what we call a significant deficiency. So there's 3 types of control deficiencies. There's a flat control deficiency, a significant deficiency, and a material weakness. And you kind of go up the ladder, material weakness being the most severe, control deficiency being the less severe, significant deficiency falls somewhere in the middle, and it's really just based on how big the number is and where it falls in our materiality threshold. Now, the other thing to point out when we get to the single audit piece is even though this finding shows up in the single audit, it actually had nothing to do with the grant that we audited. So the single audit did not have any compliance findings, and we'll discuss that in a bit. So that being said, a lot of information, I understand. I like to boil it down to 3 things. Did the city comply with all laws and regulations? Were internal controls in place, and more importantly, did they work? And do the financial statements accurately reflect the books and records? And I'm happy to report the answer to those 3 questions is yes. And we did issue an unmodified opinion on the financial statements, which is the cleanest opinion that you can receive, or highest level of opinion that you can receive during a financial statement audit. And that's even considering the significant deficiency finding. Okay? It was not severe enough by any stretch of the imagination to not give a clean opinion. Okay. Any questions before I go on to the single audit? Okay. As a reminder, any non-federal entity that expends $750,000 in federal funds or more in a given year, that triggers a single audit, which is an audit of the federal expenditures that were spent by the city. And again, it's not how much you receive in any given year that triggers that audit, but it's how much you spend of the federal funds that you received. So in 2021, the city spent $819,000 in federal funds. Again, the trigger is $750,000. So we had to do a single audit. We go through a risk assessment process that is driven by the feds and their guidelines, and the program that we didn't audit 100% of those federal funds, but we got pretty close. The grant program that we conducted our audit on was the Airport Improvement Program, which was approximately $711,000, so 87% of your federal expenditures were audited. When we conduct a single audit, we have to make a determination, is this entity a low risk or is this entity a high risk? The city did fall in the high risk category only because one of the triggers for low risk versus high risk is, have you had a single audit the year before that. Well, the last time that the city had a single audit was 2012. So that in and of itself triggered the high risk, which means we have to audit a minimum of 40% of the federal expenditures. But due to the nature of the types of grants that the city has, we ended up auditing, again, 87%, so well over that 40% threshold. And again, the single, this is what they call a single audit. So that means an audit of the entire entity, the financial statements and the federal expenditures. So the significant deficiency finding that we had on the financial statement audit side has to go into the single audit. But when we audited the major program, the airport improvement program, we had no findings. So there were no compliance findings whatsoever as far as how the city spent those money. That being said, we also issued an unmodified opinion on the single audit, which again is the cleanest or highest level of opinion that you can receive during an audit. With that, I'll stand for any questions.
Thank you very much. Questions from council? And before we go on, is Councilman Shute on?
He has been notified and waiting for me to attend.
And Councilman Ben Potter?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, great. Questions, council? Councilman Ben Potter, questions?
Nope, no questions.
Well, thank you very much. Sounds like they're doing a great job, as always. Okay, and our next two presentations are awards or achievements. I will be coming down to do that. So you want to just wait for both of them? Okay. All right. So we have an excellent finance team, and every year it seems to be proved over and over. So I have two presentations that exemplify that this evening. The first one is the Certificate of Achievement for Excellence in Financial Reporting. And the Government Finance Officers Association, or GFOA as I like to call it, has awarded the Certificate of Achievement for Excellence in Financial Reporting to the City of Gardner for its annual comprehensive financial report for the fiscal year ended December 31st, 2020. And it's the highest form of recognition in the area of governmental accounting and financial reporting. And its attainment represents a significant accomplishment by a government and its management. And this is the 17th consecutive year the city has received this award. So congratulations to you and your team, Matt. There's a nice, very heavy plaque add to it, add more numbers to it. And then the other award this evening is the Distinguished Budget Presentation Award. And again, the GFOA presented a Distinguished Budget Presentation Award to the City of Gardner, Kansas for its annual budget for the fiscal year beginning January 1st, 2022. And in order to receive this award, the governmental unit must publish a budget document that meets program criteria as a policy document, as a financial plan, and as an operations guide and a communications device. So this is the 8th consecutive year that we've received this award. So again, congratulations. And I know there's some staff here. If you want to come up, we can take a picture. Yeah. You want to hold this? Big one?
You go first. Thanks, guys.
All right, congratulations. Thank you. Okay, and our next presentation is the 2023-2024 budget policy. Finance Director Wolf.
Do you have the clicker?
I do see Council Vice President Shute online. Can you hear us okay? Steve, can you hear us? Yep. Thanks.
Yes.
So a quick overview of tonight's presentation. I'll go over the budget process, the general fund financial update, Merritt and Cola, 167th Street, accessible parks, and then mill rates and the general fund balance. So far this year, we've already gone over the year-end financial report, outside agency requests, the capital improvement program, budget policy and budget initiatives. And then tonight, I'll provide a quick update on 2022 finances. And then also, we'll get into the 23-24 budget discussion. Then on July 5th, we'll have a consideration of a resolution to exceed the revenue neutral rate and setting a public hearing. And then after we decide, after governing body decides what they want to do with the R&R, we'll know what the rest of the calendar looks like. As basically the process will vary. So just as a reminder, we ended 2021 with general fund balance of about 50%. So far, year to date, 2022, we've collected 52% of revenues versus budget. And we've only been through 42% of the year because this report is as the end of May. Sales and use tax is favorable by $175,000 or 11.6%. Licenses and permits are in 2022. We've already received $356,000, which exceeds the original annual budget expectations of $267,000. But the sales tax and the licenses and permits are positive indicators and show a strong, healthy local economy. General fund expenditures, budget actual, 37% spent versus 42% of the year elapsed. Projected end of year 2022 operating surplus of approximately $900,000. Most of this kind of operational savings is due to vacancies. We have 12.5 vacant positions. We're noticing increased competition for qualified candidates. We're struggling to deal with record-setting inflation and loss of purchasing power. And this all kind of culminates into difficulty attracting and retaining employees. How this proposed budget addresses this is it includes a 3% merit pool and 3% market adjustment in 2023. And then also in 2024, a 3% merit pool and 2% market adjustment. Following up on a CIP item that we discussed briefly at the last meeting, 167th Street, basically there's a couple of requests regarding it for the 2022 revised budget. Basically a preliminary design for the entire corridor, then also a final design for 167th Street from Center to Moonlight. And by planning out this corridor, we believe we're positioning ourselves better to apply for grants to assist in these rather large, expensive construction projects. And the recommended funding source for this is the general fund. Also in 2022 is a street rehab of 167th Street from Kill Creek to Waverly. We have a kind of a budget placeholder of $700,000 for that project with a recommended funding source of street improvement fund, which is street excise tax. And the reason for the acceleration of these improvements is, I mean, they're in our capital planning, but they weren't originally in our 5-year plan, but they're being accelerated due to all the planned development that's happening along that corridor. The 5-year CIP has 3 projects related to accessible parks. These are currently scheduled in the CIP in years 2023 through 2025 and are conditional upon availability of park impact fees. Tonight's presentation includes an alternative funding source for these projects, which would be the general fund. It's possible through the general fund to fund these improvements and basically have funding available for all 3 projects in 2023. We recently received a new valuation estimate from the county. It said there would be a 13.9% increase in our valuation. Please note that there might be some pending tax appeals that could lower the 2022 estimated assessed value, but this is the best estimate we have at this time. Keeping a flat mill rate and capturing the valuation increase would increase property taxes on the average Gardner single-family home by approximately $6.35 per month. For the purpose of this analysis, we assume the average Gardner home appraisal to be around $275,000. The revenue neutral rate would decrease the mill rate by approximately 2.409 mils. The value of a mill is approximately $280,000. This would lower property tax collections by approximately $675,000. Would also lower our allocation of motor vehicle tax and county sales tax in future budgets. We model out a few different scenarios and to look at the impact on general fund balance. Under the flat mill levy scenario, the projected fund balance would hover around 43% in 23 and 24 before dropping to about 36% at the end of our 5-year forecast. Going with the revenue neutral rate would basically have a 39% fund balance at the end of 23, then 35% at 24, and then in 27 it would drop down to 18%, and would have basically a large operating deficit of about 1.1 million at the end of that 5-year forecast. The third scenario basically has a targeted 1 mil reduction, and that basically end 23 with a 41% fund balance, a 40% at the end of 2024, and then at the end of the 5-year forecast, 29%, which is just slightly under our target fund balance. If council decides that it wants to move forward with the accessible parks in 23 and use general fund money, it would lower these numbers by approximately 7 to 8% in 2023 and about 5% by the end of 2027. For example, including accessible parks in the general fund in 23 would result in the 1 mil reduction scenario ending with a fund balance of approximately 34% in 2023 and 24% in 2027. This slide shows the 3 different scenarios and the mill rate associated with them, and a reminder that a mill is approximately 280,000. Please note this presentation focuses on the general fund, and it shows the total mill levy for the city, but it's split between 2 funds, bond and interest and general fund. Why this presentation focuses on general fund is because that's our main operating fund and we can adjust it, while the mill levy and bond and interest is dedicated towards debt service obligations. So tonight I'm looking for direction from council on what mill levy to include in the revenue neutral resolution that will be brought forth at the next meeting.
Thank you, Matt. Okay, council, start with Council President Baldwin.
Jason, what's the lifetime on those 3 parks? When are they up for revamping, if you will?
Standard, industry standards, roughly 20 years.
So are all 3 of them up in 2023? That's the 20 years?
Veterans Park was 2003. I want to say Stone Creek was shortly after that. I'm not 100% sure on Wynwood.
So they're all pretty much coming up back same time.
That's all I heard.
Councilman Ben Potter.
I don't really have any questions at this time.
Council Vice President Shu.
No questions, but I was going to ask some questions at some point about threading the needle between the revenue neutral rate and the flat rate. So we can probably dispense with that. Obviously, it would require some changes to that have to do with the budget, but that's just kind of my thinking at this point is, not necessarily capturing a low ratio.
I don't really have any questions. Are we ready to say what we want for the mill, or are we to that point yet?
Let's make sure there's no other questions
Okay.
first.
On
Yes.
Okay. And then on the accessible parks, I'm not 100% on Stone Creek, but I know Wynwood doesn't have really a parking lot. So to spend the money on making those accessible, I totally support accessible parks. But if we don't have a parking lot and they're parking along the street, have to still get up over curbs or, you know, on the street, how does that factor in? And how do we pick these 3 parks for being on the accessible parks?
We looked at, excuse me, we looked at the age of those parks and just kind of working backwards from those. I know like Quail Meadows, that was online several years ago, was gonna be in the same situation where there's gonna be off-street parking, and not like a parking lot or anything. So it's just looking at, you know, the history of those playgrounds and when they were installed.
I mean, and this is just me thinking out loud that maybe if we're gonna spend that much money on an accessible park, make sure it's the ones that are most highly visited and have parking lots and, you know, other accessible things there as well. But I understand if they're the next ones that are due for an upgrade, then our hands are kind of tied.
They may become highly visited if we improve them.
Yeah, but if they don't have parking lots and then they're highly visited with all parking in front of other people's homes and stuff, then that, I think, creates a larger hazard of if we make them the most popular parks and we don't offer parking.
Are there additional expenses to improve the accessibility, like for parking and things like that, that might accompany some of this?
There could be with, you know, additional sidewalks and things like that. We really won't know until we start diving into each location because each one is unique.
I think it makes sense to at least have a plan. It's not like, if we allocate this money for parks, it's not like we couldn't change which park we're doing when we get into it.
No,
right?
and I agree.
So I think right now, we're really just looking at whether or not we want to do it. And I think your point is well pointed, Casey, that we need to be cognizant of which ones we're doing. I think starting with the 3 that are oldest that we're gonna have to replace equipment anyway makes sense. But if there's another one that's close to that same age and let's say Wynwood's gonna cost an extra $100,000 to upgrade, maybe it gets delayed and we go to another one. So I think
that
the
was
main
just
question
me, yeah,
right
thinking
now
about
would be, do we wanna do it
Yeah.
as it's presented?
That was it for my question.
All right, so you're looking for direction on mill rates,
Mhm.
those things. So would like to start off.
I'll start, I wrote it down a minute ago.
You bet.
I would be for the 1 mil fund reduction and to upgrade the parks with the general fund.
Council Vice President Shu.
Yeah, do we happen to have an analysis, Matt, of where we are with, you know, did last year, you know, revenue neutral, flat, and then, you know, $500,000, $1 million, you know, revenue projections. We all understand that it's kind of a moving target anyway, and obviously with we're actually outperforming those significantly anyway. But is there a possibility that we can look at those instead of trying to come up with a number that may or may not meet our needs?
Yes, basically how we got to these fund balance projections is we do have some kind of base estimates for the revenues and expenditures that we kind of modeled out. When we get direction from council here, we're going to basically finalize that kind of line item budget and have it available. Now for any other scenarios, like you mentioned $500,000, I didn't specifically mention or model that one out. We went with these 3 scenarios here tonight, but if there's other scenarios you want to look at, we can take a look at those.
Yeah, I'm just kind of thinking, first of all, I think that we're going to continue to have upward pressure on ours. I mean, there's nothing, I mean, obviously we're in a wage price spiral. It's pretty clear economic situation with inflation. We're just going to we're going to see increasing pressures on 12.5 positions. I don't see any going to accelerate if we don't. I mean, I don't think a 3 and a 2 for merit and cost of living is going to cut it. I'm just honest with you. And I think that we probably need to have an understanding of where that's going to come in and how much of a mill rate, much less of a mill rate reduction than 1%. Mill levy reduction is going to be needed in order to be able to cover those salary pressures.
So Steve, do you have a proposal?
Well, that's why I brought up the half mill. So I know we did the 1 mill. I'd like to look at the half mill as well, and maybe the possibility of increasing the cost of living pool.
Councilman Van Potter?
I'm kind of with Steve Shoot on this. I think we need to see more on that. I'm worried about getting used to what we're collecting, and if the appraised values go down in the future and the revenues are affected and everything else, I think that we could be developing a precarious situation. Reducing the stress on the citizens is one aspect, as well as reducing the stress on the employees is simultaneous issue. So I don't know that I have any guidance or answers as much as I do questions.
Yeah, which is why I'm kind of mentioning the whole threading the needle thing. I think that revenue neutral is stupid. It's not going to work. Okay, we're going to lose a ton of people. 1 mil reduction, I can get behind if we can make sure that it's not going to, lose us more people, more FTEs to outside competition. We can't go flat because that's going to make the situation even worse with citizens who are already having with cost of living increases. So we've got to thread that needle. That's why I keep bringing up the half. It kind of splits the difference between two untenable positions from the perspective of our citizens, the city staff. We can't afford to lose more positions. We're already short-staffed as it is. Somebody that you lose the tribal knowledge, you lose the experience in the organization, you have to retrain all that, and you also you're going to get. I mean, your current employees are known quantities, so
it gets expensive when you start losing as well.
Yep.
Retraining, rehiring.
Steve, I think that you're talking about threading the needle, but you're mentioning it between the flat and the 1, but it's really between flat and R&R, and the 1 is just above, splitting that halfway.
Yeah.
So,
Mark, if we've taken into consideration, we're talking about a split on the merit and cost of living. Too high enough. You know, and I know that cost of living is going up much faster than that.
I get that, but if you're comparing a government salary to a private sector, being able to get 6% of a raise 1 year and 5% the next year is much higher than half the private companies in the Kansas City metro area that gives you 3% if you did a great job.
Yeah,
So,
but they're going to be under the same pressures, Mark. They're not going to be able to keep their wage increases at 3.
I bet you they do.
Then they're going to lose people.
Most companies that I've seen lately, they're giving modest raises because spending has been constricted since the inflation's so high. We probably should look into more, details on that in regards to the city. But again, I think we're in a not necessarily an uncharted territory. If you go back to even to the 70s, it kind of mirrors what we're at the beginning of right now.
Yep.
I think that if we take all factors into consideration, which I know that we are, I think the more factors we take into consideration, the more questions we have. But yeah, I think there's like Councilman Shute said, there were, you know, threading the needle.
I like the 1 mil. This is a 2-year budget, and every year we can change every single one of these numbers. So looking at the 5-year projection, you're at 29% with the 1 mil, which is what our goal has always been, 30%, right? So having 41 and 40% in 23 and 24 is actually extra. That's our cushion for the unknown, and inflation kills things. We don't know, and we can adjust here in next year if 41 turns to 34 all of a sudden, and 2024 is going to be in 26. Well, then we can adjust. So I don't think we stay flat, because we did have a very good year last year, and we need to. Plus, valuations were up 10 to 14%. So property owners have been hit, and we need to give that back. Plus, our own numbers tell us that we can. So I'm 100% in favor of the 1 mil. In fact, I had thought about doing more, but I would like to see that for 1 year, and then we can reevaluate from there.
And these scenarios include not only, because I know I asked about the personnel requests that we had received, but also all the other requests that we have received. So this scenario includes all of that in those budgets. So everything that we've been presented over the last several meetings is included in this.
Correct. During this previous meetings, we saw basically tentative approval on some of those budget initiatives, and we built those into the budget.
So that gives us a lot of extra things too, and still
I have
reduces it by.
concerns. I have concerns about 1 mil, but if this is 1 mil, then, as I said, I can go for a 1 mil reduction.
And I agree. I think the 1 mil gives us still enough cushion looking at next year.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay. Sounds like we have consensus.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Matt. Okay, it is now time for public comments. Members of the public are welcome to use this time to make comments about city matters or items on the agenda that are not part of a public hearing. If you wish to come forward, please limit your comments to 5 minutes or less. There's a 5-minute time clock on your left. No profanity, no personal attacks. That being said, come forward, state your name and address for the record. The podium is now open.
Hi, my name is Samantha Brandt. Oh, here or here? Okay. Obviously, I didn't come to talk tonight, as you can all tell. I'm sorry. Samantha Brandt, 32271 West 165th Street. Obviously, I didn't come to speak tonight, knowing that the parks were on tonight's agenda. So I have nothing written, so this will just kind of come from my heart. I have been a citizen in Gardner for over 20 years. I am a graduate here. I have raised my first daughter here, and I'm raising my second daughter here in the great city of Gardner. My daughter Macy has severe disabilities. She is non-mobile, non-verbal, and is not able to use her hands purposefully to play. So, as you can imagine, I took my first daughter to parks all over this city. Wynwood, and veterans. Celebration wasn't even heard of at that time. I unfortunately am not able to take Macy to a city park, as none are accessible. There's not one piece of accessible equipment that she is able to play with peers or other community members. After growing up in this town and then raising my first daughter, I am appalled that our city has not looked forward to making our parks and our community services accessible to all. It saddens me that I pay my taxes here. I raise my children here. I give much to this community. And my daughter is not able to go play with any of your children at a park. I appreciate that each of you has put time and effort into this and asked questions. I think we need to ask some further questions, as Mrs. Casey Deaton asked tonight. Why did we choose the parks that we chose? And it was very clear. We chose them because they're coming of age and they need to be redone anyways. We didn't choose them because there are accessibility issues there. We didn't choose them because many children play there. We didn't choose them because we have citizens from other communities coming into softball and baseball games to play with our children in this city. We did not look at the parking, as Casey mentioned. I can tell you I have an accessible vehicle with a side entrance, with a ramp that pulls out. There is no way my daughter could pull up to Wynwood Park and get out and even access an accessible park without parking. Celebration Park is where many, many children play, and that's inclusion. We need to look at the inclusion factor of these accessible parks with our children playing together. I cannot fathom that our city doesn't want to do something right now at this very moment for our children to be able to play together. I have been emailing with several of the members here and have actually taken the time with Mark Waldman to walk Celebration Park and share some accessibility options. And I have also asked, why are we waiting until 2023 to give any kind of accessibility to our children? Right now, my daughter wants to go to the park and play right at this very moment and is not able to in this city. She's not the only one. I assure you, there are plenty of children that can't play. Why can't we consider in the interim putting a swing, something of that nature, putting something so she and other kiddos that are non-mobile can play with their peers? I think we need to ask some further questions and look at some parks a little deeper, bring some families that actually live this life out to the parks and discuss this before the city puts that much money into a park that may not be as accessible as you think. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Brand.
My name's Shiloh Harlan, and I'm currently at 949 Oak Crest Drive. Okay, thanks. Good evening, Mayor, Council, and other community members that are here. I'm here tonight representing the GEHS class of 2023. I cannot believe I have a senior as a child, but it's true. So as many of you know, every year the senior parents band together with the community and the businesses and parents to fund and put on Project Grad. Project Grad is a free event that every senior is invited to, and it is on the night of graduation. So graduation's usually in the morning, and then, weather pending, and then the party is that night. It is a long-standing tradition across the country. When it began in Maine in 1980, after several alcohol and drug-induced fatalities they noticed, they started this Project Grad for a safe way for our kids to celebrate after graduation. It has so many benefits. First, it's a fun event. We usually try to have it at the high school. Back in 95 when I graduated, we had it off-site. It was super fun. I remember lots of things from it. But even back then, way back then, we had really good prizes. And so that is something that we try to do. So at the school, we rent inflatables. They have video games, laser tag. The gyms are open. There's a DJ. We feed them pizza, sandwiches, soda, nachos, whatever. So it's very kid-friendly. Another benefit is the prizes. Every student walks away with hopefully at least $100 prize. Things like TVs, mini fridges, computers, appliances, mixers, other household items, we're collecting things that would target college-bound kids as well as kids that are going to enter the workforce. And lastly, but most importantly, safety. Project Grad provides a positive and safe alternative to traditional alcohol-oriented means of celebrating. So it gets the kids in one location with their peers, and they don't have to decide, am I drinking tonight? No, I'm not. Oh, but yeah, I am. There's no peer pressure. That option's not even on the table. No one's going to get hurt at Project Grad. So that is the reason that the community bands together to help fund it. So the class of 2023 is the largest class to go through the halls of GEHS yet. I remember when Trail Ridge opened, and they were 8th graders over there. It was. Could you try again? Hello, Watch. It was massive. Just the Trail Ridge kids in that 8th grade were over 200. So big class. So over 500 students, or around 500 students, and that's 100 more students than last year. So our fundraising goal is $35,000, which is a big chunk of change. So to make this night a success, we need your help. So our committee is hopeful that the city would donate $5,000 to $7,000 toward this event. Again, it's a community event. With this large class size, we need to raise about $10,000 more than they did last year. They were at about 24. We've also talked with Edgerton, and they've preliminarily voted to give us $5,000. So we have that. So we're hoping that Gardner will come alongside Edgerton and the rest of the businesses in Gardner that and the community members that help fund this event. So do you have any questions? Okay. Well, thank you for considering contributing to this safe alcohol and drug-free event that will be for all of our GEHS class of 2023 seniors. Thank you.
I wasn't sure if anybody else was gonna. We really need to lower this thing here. Jennifer Smith, 648 South Oak Street. You already know that. This is my annual comment about Independence Day and our fireworks that are coming. I'm going to hold off on some things because we've got some stuff, hopefully, that's going to happen here pretty soon for the community, for those with sensory issues. But fireworks are already being shot off. Sunday night. Sorry, I can't talk to see you guys. Sunday night in the neighborhood behind us, fireworks were being shot off. My neighbor across the street has a newborn baby, woke the baby up. The other neighbor next door, 18-month-old, woke that baby up. So once again, my comments to you all are that you all are responsible for every citizen in this community. And I'm hoping that we have a good plan of action for our police department as best as they can. I know the numbers are probably short too with staffing issues as well. Luckily, we don't have the air show this year too. So, but I'm just here to say that, you know, the sensory issues with fireworks, the loud noises, the flash booms, the excessive shooting off after the allotted times during the days that we have it scheduled, great. But all of our citizens are due respect and make sure that they're shooting off at the appropriate times. And that's it. And also the park issue with inclusion. So I support that, and looking at Veterans Park is one park that we do go to, and there are a lot of children that go that do use wheelchairs and motorized scooters. So that is a park that would be a good park for inclusion. So thank you.
Thank you, Jen. Further comments? Okay. With that, we will move to consent agenda. Is there a council member who would like to remove an item from the consent agenda?
Number 3.
Number 3. I hear a motion to approve items 1, 2, and 4.
So moved.
Second.
Motion Deaton, second Baldwin. We approve consent items 1, 2, and 4. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Abstained. Items 1, 2, and 4 pass. Councilman Potter, consent agenda item number 3, consider authorizing the purchase of a drone from the Law Enforcement Trust Fund.
My question is pretty simple. I know the Mavic, the DJI company, produces a pretty good product, both for the average consumer and law enforcement as well. My question is this: have we explored an American company? I know DJI is made in China. Have we explored an American-made company like Teal Drones for this purpose?
Hayes. Put you on the spot.
We have not. We have not. We used communication with other drone programs, other operators, to try and gauge what was having the most success. That's part of the reason that particular drone was selected, along with the long history of support by that company.
Okay. I know that I would rather keep our money local, as you possibly can. I know that Teal is a company that specializes in military and law enforcement drones. I don't know if they can come in price point where we're looking at, I think we're looking at $28,000 for this. Is that something that we could possibly look into?
Obviously, anything's possible. I'd be open to that. I just am not familiar with the company or their product or how it stacks up against the drone we have targeted.
Okay. Can we shelve this for till the next meeting? I've actually got a call out to the company for information on that. Is that possible, Mayor?
Yeah, is not a priority?
What's that?
It's not I was asking Captain Hayes if it was a.
Yeah, it's not emergent. Our current drone is still operational. It's just at the end of its life, so that's why we're targeting the situation.
Okay.
Yeah,
I'd be in favor of tabling this.
We need to vote or just consent.
Well, if you want to table it, it would come back at the next meeting. If you want to continue it until we get information back.
I make a motion to table item number 3 to our next council meeting, regular council meeting.
You don't have to second if you want. So you could also make a motion to continue it until we do get bid information back, and the administrator could put it on the agenda at that point.
If it's better to continue, I make a motion to continue this to the next regular council meeting.
I'll second that, Steve.
Second, yeah.
Motion Shute, second Baldwin. We continue this item until we get further information. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Consent agenda item 3 will be continued. Okay, moving along. Planning and zoning consent agenda. We have nothing. Committee recommendations. Number 1, consider adopting an ordinance approving a rezoning from R2 district to RP2 district for Breckenwood Creek. Mr. Noppick.
Good evening, Mayor, members of council. Dave Noppick, Community Development Director. Both of these items under committee recommendations are closely tied together, so I'll try to give a presentation here that stops short and then come back to you with the second item, but it may overlap a little bit. The first item before you is a rezoning request for the Breckenwood Creek development. This rezoning would be requested from an R2 zone to an RP2 zone. Essentially, the difference here is that when the developer came in with their building permits, showed us the housing elevations and the plot plans, at that time it was noticed that a number of deviations would be needed from the frontage standards as well as some of the building type standards. So it was staff's recommendation that they come through and request those deviations because that was the only way to grant those. Otherwise, they'd have to redesign their houses to fit these lots. Since that was going to be a potentially recurring issue on all of the lots, it was easier to come back in, do the rezoning, and request the 4 deviations that are part of the staff report tonight. The property is located about a 1/4 to 1/2 mile west of Madison and Waverly. It consists of 38.6 acres, and the development is the same size development as it was before, 131 lots, single-family development in the future. The Planning Commission has recommended approval of the zoning change request as well as the associated development plan, and therefore we're recommending that you adopt Ordinance 2734, which would take that into effect. I'm going to stop there, and if you have any questions, I'm glad to answer those.
Thank you, Dave. Do we have any public comment on committee recommendations number 1 ordinance? Council, questions, comments?
Mr. Noppick, this is Steve. So question for you. This is really more to just give you more administrative leeway with regard to these specific deviations, correct?
That is correct. The development proposal has not changed in a substantial way. There's no recommended, what I want to call it, recommended changes from the developer per se. This is really coming about from the evaluation of the building permit applications that came in, and this would correct the scenario throughout the development. So as the single family houses come on board in a phased manner, we don't have to come back each time to try to get deviations.
Yep, so site plan doesn't change, plats don't change, everything else is gonna be status quo. The only thing this is gonna do is gonna allow you to do those administrative adjustments without having to keep bringing it back over and over again.
That is correct, and I will add to that for Councilman Shute, the other part that triggers this is many of these developments that go to these smaller lots that are narrower. This is a recurring problem. So when applications for future development are coming in, we're recommending right out of the chute that they go ahead and get the RP or the planned zoning.
Yep. Yeah, we had discussed that for infill and also future projects.
Yep.
Yep.
Any further questions?
That's all I had.
All right, do we have a motion for committee recommendation number 1?
So moved.
Motion.
Motion Deaton, second Van Potter. We accept the recommendation of the Planning Commission and approve ordinance number 2734, an ordinance changing the zoning classification or districts of certain lands located in the city of Gardner, Kansas, under the authority granted by Title 17 of the Municipal Code of the city of Gardner, Kansas. City Clerk.
Councilmember Deaton? Yes. Councilmember Roberts?
Yes.
Councilmember Shute?
Yes.
Councilmember Van Potter?
Yes.
Councilmember Baldwin?
Yes.
Mayor Winters?
Yes. Committee recommendation number 1 passes. And committee recommendation number 2, consider accepting the dedication of right-of-way and easements on the final plat for Breckenwood Creek second plat.
As noted previously, the developer has come in with building permit applications for the first phase of their development, Breckenwood Creek. This would be the second phase of the development, thus the second plat of the area. It encompasses 6.9 acres of the previously mentioned 38 acres. It's primarily the west end of the property and would include 33 single-family lots. The Planning Commission has approved the final plat. Your role tonight as a governing body is to accept the dedication of right-of-way and easements through this plat. So the recommendation is that you do such by accepting those dedications.
Any other comments? Questions or comments from council?
Nope.
Do I hear a motion for committee recommendation number 2?
So moved.
So
Motion.
Motion Deaton, I think second Van Potter. To accept the dedication of right-of-way and easements on the final plat for Breckenwood Creek, second plat, FP-22-06. City Clerk. No. Sorry. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Committee recommendation number 2 passes. No old business, moving on to new business. And I think these next couple are with you, Finance Director Wolf. New business item number 1, consider adopting a resolution, amending resolution number 2004 to authorize a modification to the scope of planned improvements to certain main traffic ways financed through the issuance of general obligation bonds.
On December 3rd, 2018, the City Council passed Resolution number 2004, authorizing the issuance of general obligation bonds in an amount not to exceed $2.28 million to make improvements to Waverly Road from 175th Street to Madison. The proposed resolution amends Resolution 2004 and formally modifies the purpose of the bond issuance to reimburse costs for improvements made to Waverly Road from 175th Street to Fountain Street. So the main difference is we're now going from Madison to Fountain Street. And it is staff's recommendation that you adopt the proposed resolution.
Do we have any public comments on business item number 1? Seeing none, any comments or concerns from council? Do I have a motion for new business item number 1?
So moved.
Second.
Motion Deaton, second Baldwin. We adopt resolution number 2105, resolution amending resolution number 2004 of the City of Gardner, Kansas, to authorize an expansion of the improvements to Waverly Road financed through the issuance of general obligation bonds of the city, all pursuant to KSA 12-685.
Councilmember Roberts,
Yes.
Councilmember Schutz,
Second. Motion Deaton.
Councilmember Schutz,
Yes.
Councilmember Van Potter,
Yes.
Councilmember Baldwin,
Yes.
Councilmember Deaton,
Yes.
New business item number 1 passes. New business item number 2, consider adopting a resolution amending resolution number 2096 to authorize an increase in the cost of improvements to certain main traffic ways financed through the issuance of general obligation bonds.
Per resolution numbers 2079 and 2096, adopted by the City Council on March 1st, 2021, and November 15th, 2021, respectively. The City Council previously authorized the issuance of general obligation bonds in an amount not to exceed $2.745 million to pay a portion of the cost of the improvements to US 56 Main Street. The proposed resolution amends resolution number 2079, repeals resolution number 2096, and formally identifies the issuance of an amount not to exceed $3.06 million in general obligation bonds as financing method, indicates the city's intent to reimburse itself for the project from the proceeds of the bonds in compliance with IRS regulations. It is staff's recommendation that you adopt the proposed resolution.
Other comment? Questions from council? Comments? Do I hear a motion for new business item number 2?
So moved.
Second.
motion Deaton, second Baldwin, we adopt resolution number 2106, resolution amending resolution number 2079, and repealing resolution number 2096 of the City of Gardner, Kansas, to authorize an increase in the cost of improvements to certain main trafficways financed through the issuance of general obligation bonds of the city, all pursuant to KSA 12-685.
Councilmember Shute,
Yes.
Councilmember Van Potter,
Yes.
Councilmember Baldwin,
Yes.
Councilmember Deaton,
Yes.
Councilmember Roberts,
Yes.
New business item number 2 passes. Business item number 3, consider adopting a resolution authorizing the public sale of certain general obligation bonds and general obligation temporary notes of the City of Gardner.
The city is scheduled to sell approximately $12.52 million in principal amount of general obligation bonds, Series 2022A, and approximately $1.4 million principal amount of general obligation temp notes, Series 2022B, on July 18th, 2022 at 11 a.m. Attached bond sale documents prepared by Municipal Advisor Kimmel include the estimated cost of issuance and debt service schedules for current refunding of 2020C temporary notes, Prairie Trace water improvements, Prairie Trace sewer improvements, Waverly Road from 175th Street to Fountain Street, and US 56 Main Street improvements. Please note that the 2020C temporary notes are related to the Tuscan Farm and Hilltop special benefit districts. We're planning to permanently finance the Tuscan Farm SPDs this year and the Hilltop SPDs next year. The proposed resolution authorizes all preparations to facilitate the sale of the bonds. Bond counsel Ellsworth and Municipal Advisor Kimmel are available here tonight to answer any questions.
Mr. Kimmel, any public comments? Mr. Kimmel, I didn't know if you wanted to speak. Maybe for what he'd be presenting or today, or
He's here mostly just for questions.
any questions of council? Everyone's good? Okay, I have a motion for business item number 3.
Motion.
Motion Van Potter, second Deaton. That we consider, or that we adopt resolution number 2107, resolution authorizing offer for public sale of certain general obligation bonds and notes of the City of Gardner, Kansas.
Councilmember Van Potter,
Yes.
Councilmember Baldwin,
Yes.
Councilmember Deaton,
Yes.
Councilmember Roberts,
Yes.
Councilmember Shute,
Yes.
New business item number 3 passes. Thank you for your time. That concludes new business. Council updates. We'll start on my left with Captain Pace.
I don't have anything. Does anybody have any questions about fireworks enforcement or any of our plans for that?
Little questions. So it's an issue every year, especially when we also have our own event going on at the same time that day. Put your best foot forward. Clerk,
nothing for me this evening.
Finance Director Wolf. 59.
Yes, staff was able to partner with Walmart to obtain a grant to cover 50 sets of noise canceling earphones. We've ordered the earphones and they're scheduled to arrive later this week. We will be meeting tomorrow to discuss the logistics of distributing the headphones and to do our due diligence to ensure they get to those who need them. And then we'll create communication about this. Once we have the headphones in hand, we'll communicate distribution information, as we first want to ensure they arrive with all the supply chain issues that have been plaguing everyone. We don't have any reason to think they won't, but just in case. So look for this to come out toward the end of the week.
Thank you, that's great.
That's awesome. Thank you.
Thank
Great to
you
hear.
for that. Jennifer, that'll be some good things. Anything else? City Attorney,
Nothing for me.
City Administrator,
Nothing tonight.
Utilities Director,
Nothing tonight.
Parks and Rec Department.
Couple things. 4th of July is right around the corner, so staff is working tirelessly to get all the plans in place. Had some hurdles through fireworks and larger commercial grade supply chain like Amy was talking about, but we're excited for the show this season, and our talent lineup that we have is going to be really good. So that day is quickly approaching, so we're just getting final details lined out with that. Also on the inclusive components to our parks, I've had some conversations with Councilmember Baldwin, our chair of Gardner Gold, Paula, and Jennifer. So staff's plan is next month we're going to look at other area agencies and see what those inclusive components look like coming into existing playgrounds and parks. So I know, I believe some of the school district playgrounds have done some modifications, so we're going to reach out to them and see kind of what we're looking at as far as cost-wise, accessibility, things like that. So I'll have more information hopefully the middle of next month.
I tend to agree. Maybe timing-wise, maybe if it is just start with one sooner than later, and then continue to vet out over the next year or so where the next ones would be.
Yeah, and it's something we haven't done before, and so we have lots of great contacts, not just in the metro, but throughout the state, with these play components, and so we have really good connections to reach out and look and see what that looks like with using these, older existing playgrounds.
Well, and I agree. I've heard from several other people about even if it's just a swing, even if we get a swing. I mean, and I don't know how much they cost, and we'd have to research and everything, but that might be something we could do, like we said, sooner than later.
Just so that everybody's aware, Jason gave you the cliff notes there, but there's more to it. So, your point
I
about
get
just
it.
a swing is what a lot of people would think.
Right.
I'm not saying this about what you just said, but there's more to it because once it's installed, if we remove it, we lose warranty coverage and the liability protection of it being moved. So we have to plan on where it's going to go from the get-go. So even if it's getting added on an existing park, we've got to think through what it's going to do for 20 years.
And I want us to do that, but if we could do that and still get something fairly quickly on all
That's
four.
right. And also, like Wynwood, right? We can't just throw in a swing if you can't get to said swing. So we might have some sidewalk work and several other things. So it's not as simple as we throw in a swing, right? And so Jason's looking at that, and like you said, he's already got a plan. So there's just more to it that's behind the scenes.
Are we talking about this? Can I ask, are we getting our Parks and Rec Committee or ADA Committee involved to get some more public input, maybe?
So typically with these sort of projects, you do obviously have stakeholders and a subcommittee to look at, okay, looking at the ADA committee, our special needs committee, our Parks and Rec advisory committee. So yeah, once the ball gets rolling with that stuff, then, we'll look at, design consultants, and then very similar to what we did with downtown destination, things like that. So yes, there will be input, public input for sure.
Okay, perfect.
But again, I hope there's some things we do sooner than later, and not get bogged down in it has to go through 5 committees and town.
I just want to make sure we're getting plenty of public input because we all have great ideas. There might be things that we're not thinking of.
Absolutely.
Well, and
We'll
lucky
work
for
with a
us,
sense of urgency.
we will. And lucky for us, we have our own Gardner Gold community that we sponsor and oversee, so we'll have lots of great feedback from them.
Always.
All right. Thank you, Jason. Anything else?
That's all.
Community development?
Can I jump in?
Yes.
You want to talk about the pickleball?
Oh, I was going to ask.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So I did reach out to the school district and discuss with them the possibility of doing pickleball lines on tennis courts. And I believe they were reached out by someone last month.
Okay.
And they went ahead and got pricing. And it sounds to me like it would cost about $1,700 to configure 2 of the tennis courts up there.
I think there's 8 of them over there right now.
I think so.
Yeah.
Yes, and so there is some interest on their end. So I was speaking with John Duncanson, and he was going to speak to others with the school district and see if that's a real possibility. So I can hopefully have more information possibly put in writing.
Perfect, thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay.
2 items. One, Planning Commission meeting is next Monday at 7 p.m. We do have a couple items on the agenda. Packets should be getting out late tomorrow, early Thursday morning, so be aware of that. We'll get links out to everybody. The second item that I just want to mention briefly is mobile food vendors, otherwise known as food trucks, trailers, and other creative elements that are used to distribute food to the citizens. We're going to probably begin looking at our current regulations on those mobile food vendors. We've had some scenarios come up where people have gotten very creative in what they're doing. That regulation, that set of regulations, was really designed around the idea that mobile food vendors would provide their services through a self-contained unit that was mobile from place to place. We are now getting into some very creative, semi-permanent solutions that have been made out there, and therefore we're going to take a look at this and kind of do a comprehensive review. We don't want to over-regulate the entrepreneurial side of the business, but on the other hand, we need to do some things because adjacent properties are being impacted by some of these activities, as well as it gives us an opportunity to potentially get improvements made to the property that some of these vendors go on. So when they're becoming semi-permanent, then we got to look at parking much closer. We have to look at the activity that's happening on that site and how it's being provided. So just be aware that we're going to start doing that at the staff level, and it'll probably come forward to you in the next few months. That's all I have.
Public Works?
Nothing further tonight.
Okay. So why don't we start with Councilman Van Potter?
Yeah, I think tonight's conversation has been interesting. Samantha, her grievances, I think I'm glad to see that she's hopefully going to be involved in the design of some of these parks and the additions to them. I had a severe disability for years, and one of the biggest frustrations that I dealt with was the accommodations were designed by people who never really dealt with the disabilities that they're trying to accommodate. And I would like to see more citizen input on the design of the inclusive parks.
Anything else, Councilman Potter?
No.
Thank you. Let's go to Council Vice President Shute.
I'll just echo what Councilman Van Potter said. I think it's kind of important. I think that we had disability activists in the past go through like a walk and roll around several areas of town, and this is not just for the parks, but it's also for other accessible places within the community. I think it does us with a better perspective as to exactly what the mobility challenged and disabled people in the community have when it comes to navigating our community parks and our public spaces. So I think it would be really good. I was a member of what was the original AD, and then it got rolled into Public Works and Accessibility, but I think that we might want to have another one of those sessions at some point in the future. People in the community that deal with sensory challenges, things like that, and we probably need to have that as part of this discussion as well. But Public Works and Accessibility, I know that there's some folks. We just need to continue those discussions again and make Gardner more inclusive.
Thank you. Anything further?
Nope, no more.
Councilmember Roberts.
I only have one thing, because I was asked about pickleball, so
so that was perfect. I want to thank the city administrator and staff for attempting to get the weeds cut on 175th Street, because I had 4 complaints last week. They were having a hard time pulling out because you couldn't see, especially in more cars. It looked like we're working on that. There's some other high areas, but I think you're still contacting the property owners, I think. Okay. So thank you for getting that. That was pretty quick. So I had people very appreciative. So thank you very much.
Yeah, I had a couple citizens ask me about maybe hosting a fly-in with food trucks at our municipal airport. Maybe get a little bit of interest. We've got all these food trucks in town, and maybe partnering with like the Young Eagles program or something, and doing a fly-in and food truck event out there. I didn't know if that's something that we could look into. And then also we have a CPAC meeting on Monday at 7 p.m. at the Justice Center. We have a presentation from the Sheriff's Department on their dispatch.
Just quickly in regard to the food truck idea, I will tell you, Kellen and I have been kicking around a number of different concepts having to do with the airport to begin with, and we have mentioned the mobile food vendors there. It may be something that we can do through a temporary use permit, but we'd probably do it more like a special event, and so we'd want to look into the logistics of that. So it is possible to do those kinds of things. We just have to get a good understanding of why the event's being held, what's going on there, because if we call it a special event, I've got a lot more leeway on the zoning side. So that would be the fun part of it. I know other cities do what are called food truck frenzies, where they just have a 1-day or 2-day event where they gather them all in a parking lot, and that would be considered a special event to me, and we could accommodate that kind of thing.
Which I think we could do that with either a fly-in or the Young Eagles program. They do it once a month where, kids and families are out there flying around anyway, so you've got an audience already, and then maybe attract others as well.
Yeah, and then if there's some way that it ties into a fundraiser for one of those groups that helps them with their activities, that may be something that's very easily justifiable.
Council President Baldwin? Dave, I'm glad you're looking into the food truck thing. I was actually going to bring that up. What does the semi-permanent fall under? Is that a restaurant? Is that a truck on wheels? Okay. Jason, thanks for all your work. I know we've had lots of emails and so forth, and obviously there's been a lot of talk tonight. I had a question as to how we ended up doing the dog treats for Independence Day, since last I knew it was a liability concern. So how did we get around that?
We did prepare a liability waiver.
Okay.
So when people pick them up, they're going to execute the waivers.
Okay. Thank you. All right. Well, then that's all I have. Oh, are we talking about Project Grant?
That's what I was bringing up. So yeah,
Well, you guys know my stance on that, and it has nothing to do with Project Grad in itself. I think that's a wonderful program. I just don't think the city should be the one paying for it.
Were we able to get what we paid this year? I think somebody was going to look that up. Or we talked about it last time.
It was $3,000.
Okay. And they were asking 5 to 7 this year. Well, I'll just, my opinion. I say we should do it. We should do the full 7,000. I think it's good community relations. It's good for the kids. It provides a safe activity. I don't know. I think we should do it.
I tend to agree with Councilmember Roberts personally, but I think Councilman Potter said, made a comment like, where do we stop? And I think I think that certain things are obvious where we stop, and I think things like this are important for the community. It's a safety issue. It's a
I understand the motivation behind it. Now I also understand that I went to high school in 1883, but when we had it in our school, the funds were raised by the school, by the classmates in the school. I think using the citizens' money to fund such an event, if they want to donate on their own accord, I think that's commendable. I don't know that choosing to use their money for such a thing is necessarily good stewardship.
Right? Well, Council Vice President?
Are we talking about sending it to zero then, guys?
I would be.
I wouldn't necessarily mind the same level as last year.
So as long as it's not above $3,000, we're good. So if I bring a list of 100 good organizations, the $3,000's the cap, we're good. I mean, why not prom and homecoming? They're exactly the same scenario. Draw the line there? No? Just graduation? Sometimes dangerous?
I don't know, maybe, they haven't asked us, maybe I would wanna do it for that too, I don't know, Mark.
Just saying.
Well, Steve, you're in favor of the 3? Is that what I'm
Maintaining it at the level that we funded it last year. I don't think that, I mean, I know that everybody's up against it, but it includes our citizens. So with funding it at the current level, I think that we're, and again, I have kids that graduated this past year, and I know the value of Project Grad. But I think that, you know, we're asking a lot of our citizens as it is. But I don't want to send it to zero either. I think that sends a bad.
Because it's okay to ask the citizens a little bit.
You know, you're heartless, so you know.
Well, so it sounds like there's Councilman Dean, are you okay with 3? Councilman Roberts, are you okay with 3?
Well, I would like 7 that they asked for, but if it's 0 or 3, then I'll pick 3.
Sounds like there's some consensus to stay at 3. All right. Okay. Is that direction for staff? Okay. All right. We do have 2 executive sessions this evening. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
We'll go into that here in a second. Motion Shoot, do we have a second?
Second.
Second Baldwin. We recess into executive session to discuss the acquisition of real property pursuant to KSA 754319B6, specifically preliminary discussions relating to the acquisition of real property beginning at 15 minutes. Beginning at 8:30, returning to regular session at 8:45 p.m. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Abstained? Right, got it.
what I'm good for.
Moved it.
Oh, here's Mayor.
Yeah, you've got,
Okay.
you've got it for me.
Can you hear us? Councilman Van Potter?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. All right, is there a motion to resume?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Stand there, Steve. We're back in regular session. We have a second executive session. Is there, where'd we go? There it is.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Motion Baldwin, second D, that we recess into executive session to discuss matters of attorney-client privilege pursuant to KSA 75-4319B2, specifically preliminary discussions relating to the acquisition of real property beginning.
Next one.
Next one.
Discuss matters of attorney privilege. That may be
That was the one that got added.
that may be my error.
Oh, sorry.
That was added last minute, so that may be my error.
Oh, okay.
Is the second one.
To discuss matters of attorney-client privilege, beginning at 8:47, returning to regular session at 9:07 p.m. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? hear us?
Absolutely.
Yeah, where are you? We're just curious where you are.
West Yellowstone.
Oh, wow. How's the flooding?
Yeah, the park doesn't open again until tomorrow. So.
That's unlucky.
Well, it's only been closed like this once in the last 40 years. So, yeah.
What'd you do?
Lucky relative.
Made a reservation. Saw the name, shut down.
What was it, last year or 2 years ago? There was all the fires.
It's 9:07. Do I have a motion to resume regular session?
So moved. Second.
Motion Deaton, second Baldwin to resume regular session. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Back in regular session. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second. Motion Deaton, second Baldwin. We adjourn. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? We're in adjournment.
Take it easy, guys.